Right, good morning, Lyndsey, and thank you for making time for us today. My first question is, can you just share a little bit more about 55 Redefined and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Paul, and great to be here. So in a nutshell, 55 Redefined enable businesses to attract, grow and engage over 50s talent to work in their businesses and over 50s consumers to buy from them. And so that's what we do across all of our brands. But then what it means is that we have this double-hatted role because our clients are B2B corporations and typically large corporations with over 5,000 employees. But our audience are the world's over 50s population. And so we have a number of channels where we're directly supporting and engaging with over 50s consumers, candidates, whether that be on Life Redefined, our lifestyle platform, or Jobs Redefined, which is one of our career sites.
And why do you think that age inclusion, particularly for over 55s, is particularly important now?
So I think there's been a massive shift from a population stance point. So we've added over the last 100 years, 30 years to life expectancy, which is a huge leap. But what it's only really happening is taking effect now, as this is the generation that are the very first people to experience that 50 to 70 period of life, which is in effect a brand new phase of life. And so they don't kind of feel like they want to retire and they don't feel old in any way, shape or form, but equally they're not at the start of their career and they're perhaps been doing the same role for 30 plus years. And so it's kind of a bit of a no man's land where for that group of people, that generation that are hitting their 50s and their 60s are pioneers. They're kind of the first ones in and going, you know, what do we do? How does this work? How do I reinvent myself? How do I reskill, retool up and go again? And so it's important now because it is the very first time anybody's going through this phase. And equally, we haven't seen that many companies have adjusted their organisational design to cope with. And so that tradition of kind of having a working career and then retirement in the mid-60s is failing companies. And so we're also seeing the companies are saying, okay, how do we embrace a workforce that can now span from, 16 to 85 and everything in between?
I remember talking to you probably 2 years ago when you first started approaching, and I kind of said, we're not ready for it. We don't see age inclusion.
Everyone wants to talk about gender and race.
Yeah, exactly. But fast forward 2 years and clearly, God, there's been so much momentum, and obviously attending your Age Pioneers event in London a few weeks ago, you had a room full of very senior leaders from UK corporate. So what's changed? What's really got senior leaders engaged and interested in this topic, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's been it's not been one thing, it's been a lot of little things, but there are 3 big events that have happened in that time frame that have caused organisations to suddenly shake up their boardrooms and go, wow, why haven't we been talking about this? The first thing that happened is the UK last year and a number of other countries released their census or equivalent data over the last 12 months. And what that showed was that we all knew we had an ageing population. That wasn't new news, but we had leapt. So in the 10 years between censuses, we are ageing at a much faster rate than anybody had predicted. Right. And equally, we hadn't overlaid in any real sense the reduction in birth rate. So it suddenly shone a massive light on the fact that we know who's going to be in our workforces in 20 years because they're already working now because nobody's having kids. And so they're not going to be coming out of college and universities in 20 years time. So that census data caused shockwaves as economists and those that were looking at the longer term trends for businesses and impact suddenly realised that we'd leapt a few decades. The second thing that happened, particularly in 2023, at the beginning of 2023, was, I think, probably the tightest labour market on record. You and I, have been in the sector for many, many years, decades. And so I remember, you always have peaks and troughs as you have with talent acquisition, for example, but never have we seen a tight labour market in the way that we had at the end of 2022 and into 23. And so from a corporate perspective, again, companies were like, well, we have no sustainable talent pools. You know, we're all fishing after the same pool of people. There isn't enough of them. And actually, we're now creating these critical skill shortages in roles that you can't easily train. You know, so actuaries, for example, or infrastructure engineers and mainframe engineers that are still powering things that people thought would be long in the cloud by now, and they've still, you know, got hardware in their businesses. And so that caused companies to not just look at age, actually, but I think look at every hidden talent pool. I think it put a wind behind looking at disability. It looked at returners and everything where, you know, it wasn't just the usual suspects that were in the talent market. And then the third big thing was economic. So last year, at the end of 2023, we saw an increase in interest rates globally for the first time in over 15 years. And that has shone a spotlight on developed economies. So if you look at France, Germany, UK, USA, countries where you have aging populations, which has an impact on housing, social care, affordability of the welfare state. And then you layer in an extra 5, 6, 7% of interest to those governments. And suddenly we saw at the end of 2023, both the US and France downgraded by Moody's and other rating agencies, and forecasts from the rating agencies that said actually half of the world's global economies will be junk bond status in the next 20 years, unless they solve how we get people working for longer and saving more. And so if you put those three things together, what you then have is boardroom agendas that are typically looking at those macroeconomic themes, looking at financing of their companies, and then looking at ESG and how do they have a sustainable skills force, a sustainable workforce, and something that mirrors society. And that blend of events came together where suddenly boardrooms around the world woke up to it.
And this has clearly led to senior leaders really wanting to engage in this topic like nothing before, really.
Completely. It's we are you know, we're very fortunate as I think one of the first to market in this space. That we have been parachuted globally very quickly. So for a business that's a UK startup and scale up, you wouldn't expect us to be operating in 18 countries so quickly into our inception. But it's because of a lack of support on the ground and a lack of what I would call commercial partners. So there's a lot of not-for-profit and brilliant charities in the sector of age, but typically they're focusing on the 70 plus demographic. And then they focus in on the bottom 5%. So people that are, you know, struggling financially, you know, or economically inactive. Whereas we're looking at the big population, which is the 50 to 70 population, those that want to remain economically active. And how do we unlock that value, both from a workforce perspective, but also from a consumer spend perspective, given they control 3/4 of the world's wealth in that age group.
I wanted to finish our conversation on the AMS D&I Alliance. We are proud to have 55 Redefined as part of our alliance. And as you know, we formed this around about 18 months ago as a way of pulling together a group of external partners who have a role to play in driving change with organisations, whether it be around age, sexual orientation, black inclusion, disability inclusion, etc. And we have formed a partnership of 9 different organisations, of which 55 Redefined are one of those partners. So we are really excited about the opportunity in terms of going to our clients with our alliance, to help our clients around their different challenges that they face around diversity, equity and inclusion. As I say, we are really excited to have you on board. I'm wondering what your, the potential you see and the opportunity you see in being part of that alliance.
Yeah, no, it's a huge opportunity. I think coming together, bringing the AMS global scale and reach with then very deep subject matter expertise that ourselves and each of the other partners bring around our topic areas. There are a couple of real areas of benefit that I see both directions. So one is, we are a deep subject matter about age, but age intersects with every other characteristic. And so we are often asked around how age intersects with disability or with race, for example. I mean, I'll give you a great example. I was in New York just a couple of weeks ago, and one of our global clients there, the head of D&I, is an African-American lady. And when we talked about 50% of babies being born in the US reaching 104, her first question was, is that the same for me being an African-American origin?
Yeah.
It's a brilliant question where we don't have enough data around intersectionality because it's still a new emerging topic. And so by having these other partners, we're able to get a deeper set of data to go, well, how does this play out with race? How does this play out with disability? How can we bring our different expertises together so that we have a much greater understanding of the impact on individuals rather than it being generic data? So that's one great example that we were then able to go back and share some detailed data. The second is that we are an emerging organisation. So, for example, we don't currently have any relationships into the public sector. But because AMS, you already have that opportunity, rather than us trying to, as an individual company, go into all the different departments, we have the ability to participate in these framework solutions whereby they, as the buyer, can buy all lenses of D&I through AMS. And we as a supplier aren't tying ourselves up in procurement knots trying to engage with multiple different parties. So I think in terms of impact, it means that we can get there faster by joining forces together.
Great, and certainly we're seeing the impact of that with feedback from our clients across public sector and other organisations, and we're excited about the opportunities certainly for the year ahead. Lyndsey, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning. I've really enjoyed our conversation. As I say, 2 years ago when we first had the conversation around this topic, I was a little bit kind of hands-off, as you recall, and I am delighted that we are much more engaged in this topic right now as an organisation. I can see there's huge opportunities for all of the points that you have mentioned, and we're really excited to be partnering with you around this topic. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing how this develops over the next 12 months in particular.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. And thanks to all of those at AMS who are supporting us on this journey.